Hi, this is BJ Fogg. At this point, you understand the basics of tiny habits. You know what an anchor is, you know what a tiny behavior is, you know what a celebration is. You know what a tiny habit recipe is. Now, I'm going to give you level 200, take you a little bit farther than those basics. And let's talk about recipe formation. How do you connect the anchor to the tiny behavior? And there's really two ways to do it. Most people start with a big behavior like flossing or exercise more, and they scale it back to something tiny. And then they find an anchor that appropriately triggers that behavior. So they start with the tiny behavior on the behavior side. Yeah, that's one way, and that's great. You may want to read more. So scale that back to something really, really small, and then figure out what is your anchor or your trigger that will then remind you to read more. But there's another way to do it. And in some ways, this is even more efficient. You can make a list of existing routines in your life. What's something you do once a day, every day, or twice a day, every day? Make a list of those things. And then think, wow, what's a behavior I can put after this routine? In other words, you start with your existing routines and you make that an anchor to remind you to do a new behavior. And I think of it sort of like real estate. If you have an existing routine, right after that routine, you can often insert a new behavior. You just haven't developed the property yet. And if it's a very reliable routine, especially if you do it once or twice a day, especially if you do it in the morning, that's a very valuable opportunity. You can use that routine to trigger a new habit pretty quickly. So then you have to think, well, what's a behavior, a tiny behavior that would logically follow something I'm already doing? In review, I want to talk about two directions, two different approaches to creating recipes. One is to start with the tiny behavior, find an appropriate anchor. That's the way most people think about it. But an unusual way, and maybe even more effective, is to start with the anchor, an existing routine, and figure out what is a new behavior I want in my life that can sequence naturally after that.